Welcome to the Redeemed Man podcast. I'm Nate Dewberry, part of the team here at the Redeemed, and we're building a supportive community for men where men can not only survive, but they can thrive in their relationships and their faith journeys. And we love having conversations, meaningful conversations that really dig into people's stories, their struggles, their victories. And today it's my pleasure to have on the show Jason Dennis. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Nate. Appreciate it.
It is so much fun because, as you guys will hear, as I talk a little bit about his background, he is a news anchor. So this is a piece of cake for you. But on the other side, you're usually the one asking the questions, not having the questions asked to you. But Jason spent 15 years in the news industry. Faith has been the guiding principle in his life. He's a husband, a father, and we're just excited to have him on the show. He's been here in Columbus for many years and calls here home now, although this is not where he's originally from. Jason, where are you originally from?
The mountains of North Carolina. It's a beautiful kind of near Asheville, North Carolina, but I've been in Columbus for, I believe, if I do the math right, about 22 of the last 25 years. This is where my wife is originally from, where she grew up through elementary school. So happy wife, happy life.
Yes. And you spent some time in Texas, is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Galveston.
Okay.
I lived there for about 6 months because my dad was a pediatrician in residency, but lived for 20 years in North Carolina, now the last 25 or so in Georgia and Alabama, and I think I'm now used to the heat and humidity now. Barely, but I am. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I think if I had a choice, I would choose the mountains up near Asheville.
That's nice.
Over Columbus. Again, no offense. I love our community. I love our people, and the people's what make an area. But as far as the beauty and just the climate, the mountains would be my place. So.
Yeah, I mean it's great. I mean when you look out your door and you see the mountains from your house, I mean that it's can't beat that.
Yeah. Well, I know faith is very much a part of your life in every way. You have a podcast actually where you talk a lot about faith and fitness, and I just want to hear how faith has really shaped both your personal journey and your career.
Well, I grew up in church. Maybe a lot of people have that same story. I don't have this testimony where I, was addicted to drugs or was abused or anything like that. I've had a pretty good life, and I thank God for that. Grew up in Presbyterian, Baptist, Methodist, non-denominational, and then I met my wife, who is a pastor's kid, and her dad was an Assembly of God pastor. Okay. So I wasn't familiar with Pentecostal. So I went to church with her the first time in college, and somebody spoke in tongues there, and I'm like, "Whoa, are they speaking Spanish? What's going on here? I can't understand them." And she explained to me, showed me in the Bible. I'm like, "Oh, well, it's biblical." So, but growing up in church, and saved early in life, baptized, and really have really connected to church, and it's like any walk of faith, kind of the up and down journey of that. And, for me, a big part of, especially my teenage years and 20s, was seeking God's will. And like, what do you want me to do? And so that's a difficult thing for all of us.
Yes.
I mean, whether you're 30 years old or 60 years old, you're like, have I done what I want to do or what God wants me to do? And that in this TV news career for a quarter century now, I've keep asking myself that, and God keeps telling me, that in like sometimes in neon sign that like you are where I want you to be, because with what I do, I'm kind of a quote local celebrity.
Yeah.
And so it gives me a platform, and like what the movie Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. So for me, I feel like I have this responsibility, this platform. People know me, strangers recognize me. And so what am I going to do with that? And so for me, I want to proclaim the name of Jesus. I want to give him glory, and I want to be kind to others. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to simply being a nice person. And that can be sometimes the best witness. And so, using what I do in TV to kind of spread my faith, not necessarily like preaching down to people, but just kind of showing God's love. And maybe that's makes me kind of different than the typical media person,
Yeah, I would think with kind of the climate in the last 8 years in our country, although locally I'm sure is a little bit different than the attention on national media, that it's been challenging at times. the kind of, is this representative of what I believe? And then what do people think about me and how I present this? How have you navigated some of those difficult stories and even presenting things that sometimes you're like, wow, this is something I really am reporting on versus is a passion of my own heart?
Yeah, and you hear things like, in past years recently where it's called fake
Yeah.
news and the media gets a bad rap. And I understand I think there's bad seeds in any business, even the
For sure.
church,
For sure.
So, and I think that, and unfortunately it kind of upsets, the whole, all the apples because of that. But, people ask me that a lot saying, how do you do that job as a Christian? You're reporting on murders and on, corruption and government and on, fighting going on. And so we try to balance kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly on the TV news. So we try to give some good news as well. But it's part of my job, and so I can't necessarily say Jesus is Lord on a TV newscast, but I feel like that I can do stories in a compassionate way and shape things in a way that is has some subtleties to it. And my thing that I try to do, and I'm not always good at this, but I try to on a weekly, daily basis. I say, God, just use me. Holy Spirit, use me. And it's interesting because I've had a few people come up to me just randomly, downtown or at the grocery store, a couple people, and have said, I just want to let you know, thank you for what you do. The Holy Spirit, I can feel him through the TV screen. And it kind of, it sends chills down my spine because I'm like, it's not me, it's him. And so, it's interesting how, a lot of us feel like in our jobs as a lawyer or a podcast host or, a janitor or something like, can God really use me? And I think, truly he really can. You just have to, find those opportunities because he'll open those doors. And so, when I'm given the news, I feel like God's giving me this gift to, whatever it is, to be soft with it or to not be fake, to be myself. And and we know this with any job in life. The secret is to be yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the hardest thing for folks. And it can be really hard when you've got a camera and 30,000 people on the other side of that camera and lights and makeup on. With all that, I mean, that, it makes it hard maybe necessarily to be yourself. But once you get into that comfort zone, and God can use you. So I just try to be Jason Dennis and it makes it a little easier. I don't have to put on a certain face to do that.
Well, and from a listener, usually every evening in our home, we have the news on, and then just knowing you and have been on your podcast and interacting with you and even watching your interactions with others, that is definitely the case, that you are the same person, whether you're on the news in the evening or whether you're sitting across the table from a friend. And one of our core values is to forge brotherhood. And the reason we really have that forge part is because we know that relationships take work. It's not something that is always easy. And especially sometimes among men, it can be the hardest to really build a deep friendship. Yeah. But one of the things that I watch here in our community is just how many people know who you are, but not from the celebrity standpoint, but they actually would say, hey, I know Jason Dennis, and talk about, running with you or some activity with church. And that's part of who you are, is building relationships in our community. And I think that's what gives you at least, so much credibility from those people who are tuning in and listening and going, no, I've seen this guy. He's real. He's one of us. And I think people love that. And, I love watching your stories. You're an avid runner and you're always running with somebody different. It seems like, again, building those relationships. Talk a little bit about that and how I'm sure that's probably an outlet for you in so many ways. So talk a little bit about your life and how the love for running developed and how you utilize that really to not only care for yourself physically, but spiritually as well.
Yeah, well, you're too kind for the words you said before. I really appreciate that. And sometimes I think I ask myself, am I running to something or am I running from something? Because people that don't run say, well, if you catch me running, that means there's some monster on the other side. To be honest with you, the way I kind of and really, as folks that are listening, a lot of people don't like running. I mean, I'm probably in the minority that I like and I enjoy running. And I played sports growing up, tennis, basketball, all those things, and running was punishment for those sports. And so now, about 11 years ago, I was kind of doing these yo-yo diets where I would lose 30 pounds over the course of a couple months, and then I would gain them right back over the course of stress and holidays, and then back and forth. And so I was like, how can I? I love to eat, so how can I get away with eating what I want, but not gaining all this weight? And so I started running just a little bit, doing a 5K, and then kind of grew up now where I run marathons, which is 26.2 miles, and which seems like a lot, which it is a lot, but I enjoy it, and I run essentially every day, and I enjoy it as an outlet. It started off as something where weight loss and wanting to eat what I want, but it's turned into just a healthy habit, and God's used that in my life to kind of rescue me from myself, I guess, and to kind of for my mental health. Kind of you're releasing toxins, like literally are, and sweat, and it's just a way. About half the time I'm running with people. I'm running. People think of running. They think of, okay, you're sprinting. No, I'm not. I am running a 10-minute pace. I'm running easy. And when I run with somebody, that I'm used to running with, I tell people it's like having a cup of coffee with somebody. We're running for an hour. We're literally talking the whole time. And we're talking about like deep stuff. You talk about relationships. With those people that I'm running with, we talk about some really deep stuff like that they're going through, that I'm going through with our family, deep stuff that really kind of gets to the root of our, maybe some traumatic things. Things that you wouldn't talk about, any other way. And so I think that's been the kind of surprising and rewarding thing about running for me. But also for me, I'm one that likes to challenge myself. And so, having something on the docket, like, okay, and that's kind of how God has made me, is somebody having that carrot to make me disciplined and not be lazy or a procrastinator. And so for me, my big challenge right now is running a marathon in all 50 states. And so and it's also just, to see this amazing America that God has made all over. So I'm about 31 states in, so I've still got a little ways to go. But man, it's been awesome to see the different states this way, and places I wouldn't have gone to before. Just did Chicago last year, and so running's really opened up some doors, and it's been pretty cool. It's been a lot of fun, and I get to eat. So there you go.
So Illinois last year, what state's coming out?
I've got Maryland coming up.
Okay.
I usually do about 6 marathons a year, so it's quite a bit. But I've got New York City this November, so that's a big one. So it's something where I feel like it's I'm just gonna keep going, because it's something where I feel like running is going to continue in my life, because I think it is a healthy habit. There's some worse things I could do for sure.
There's no doubt about it. And if you enjoy eating, it's a great one to have, so that you can balance out. And when you're running marathons, you're burning a lot of calories. So definitely helpful to, especially go to New York. You can enjoy a great meal in New York, and then especially after the marathon's over with. You mentioned, though, talking about deep things when you're running. And I think that's a great word for guys to really think about, because I think a lot of times guys think you have to sit across the table and divulge some information, or it's just in a small group. But oftentimes the best conversations we can have in our life are with brothers out doing something, whether it's serving somebody else or whether it's a hobby that we love. I mean, I think some of the best conversations I've heard about happen on the golf course a lot of times, with guys who are playing a game and they start talking about something they're struggling with. And I think for us as men, we need to probably give ourselves some grace in that, not put so much pressure, and look at the opportunities we have, and maybe take a risk when we're not face to face with somebody, but we're actually doing a physical activity. A lot of times it's easier to test the waters of how something's going to be received. And I tell guys all the time, when you share something difficult that you're facing or walking through, most of the time, a guy around you is going to go, I get it. I've been there too. Or I'm going through it now. Yeah. And when you do that identification with each other, there is a brotherhood that's formed and forged, and can really help you achieve some things in your life you couldn't have done on your own. I mean, I'm sure that, those conversations really motivate you and help you when you are working toward those goals and running. I when you started talking about talking while you're running, I remember the first time I ran with my wife. She had been in the army, or was in the army, and that was normally how she would brief her boss that morning, was running. And she started talking, and I'm like, are you expecting me to talk back to you? Because I'm not going to do that.
Okay,
Yes.
what, are we almost done?
Yes, yes, because I'm not a runner, and it was very funny the first few times we ran together, because I'm like, no, I'm probably putting my earbuds.
And I mean, and that's a good lesson too, because, you know, for me, you know, people think, okay, well, you have to really start. I mean, and this is with your Christian walk or with anything, you have to start slow and start short and slow, and give yourself some wins. They may be small wins, but then you kind of build on top of that, and it takes time. I mean, being a good Christian, being a good runner, being a good news anchor, that doesn't just come overnight or in a year. It comes over the course of, you know, lessons learned and mistakes made, and you know, things that you win. And so I think with all that, you know, that all kind of builds. It's like you're kind of building a house. And so, you know, I think with running, I've discovered, you know, finish lines are great. You get the medal, you get this, you know, it's kind of like glory, you know, but the journey is really what it's all about. And so kind of getting there, you know, that 2 to 4 months of training for that race, and kind of all that work that you put in, and, you know, you're rewarded for that, not for just what you did that day at that race. And so, you know, that's what I like, is just the work you put in, and it's almost like, you know, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to run, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to eat, I'm going to spend time with my family, I'm going to go and anchor some newscasts.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Jason, you mentioned your life has been really easy in some ways, how you describe it. But I know there's been some challenges along the way that you've faced. Could you share about maybe some of the more difficult things that you've walked through, and what that revealed in yourself, and also even in your faith?
Well, you know, with my family, I mean, they are, you know, top priority for me. You know, God and my family are right up there. And so, you know, when something happens to your family, I think we can all relate to this. When something happens with our wife or with our kids, it hits, you know, deeper than anything else. And so I've been married for almost 25 years now. I'm thankful for my wife. She's checks and balances for me, which is great, because I say that because she doesn't put up with any you know, me being a jerk. Yeah. If I say something off, she'll let me know immediately, which is great. I need that, checks and balances, right? But, you know, with my family, our kids are, by the way, are my daughter's 22 and my son is 20. And about, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, you know, I've lost count, but my daughter, when she turned like 16 or 17, she started going through this very, very difficult journey. And she was diagnosed with several chronic illnesses, and it sent her on this journey of mental health, where she was dealing with OCD and anxiety and depression and suicidal ideations. And we hear about that a lot with young people these days, especially coming out of COVID. Yeah. And so, but to experience it like, you know, right there in front of you with somebody that you love dearly, it puts a whole new perspective on it. And I know that, like in the Bible, it says, "Do not be anxious for anything." But you know, I'm not somebody who would interpret that in any way. But you know, I think we all have different forms of anxiety. We all get nervous about things, and it affects us in different ways. But for her, it was, you know, something very, very deep and very difficult. And we went through a very rocky time. There was 1 year that it was just like a fight every other day. And, you know, sometimes the parents can be the villains. Yeah. And so, you know, we had to learn, and we had to pray. My wife and I both went to counseling separately so we could have self-care. She could take care of herself. I could take care of myself, because one thing I discovered through that whole process is, well, I relearned, is the devil, the first thing he's going to go after is the marriage. That's the number one thing because once he can topple that marriage, he can take care, everything else kind of falls, you know, from that. And so we knew, and God showed us, that we need to protect the marriage at all costs. And so we, you know, we went to counseling, we came back together, and we pray for the word that we prayed for is breakthrough. Like, we want breakthrough, God. We know that you can do some amazing things, and we saw breakthrough, but it took time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like, you know, that it just happens over the course of months. It takes years for sometimes that breakthrough to happen, and we want things to happen now. We're, you know, impatient people. So, you know, it's something where we saw that breakthrough, and now she's doing better. It's still a journey, but she's thriving. She's involved in different ministries in town, college ministries and stuff, and going to church on a regular basis. And I'm just so thankful for that. But the main thing I learned from all that was the simple fact of let go and let God. And because we were trying to fix the problem ourselves. As mom and dad, you want to fix, you want to put the Band-Aid on, but that doesn't work. So especially as they get older, we had to kind of take a step back, take a foot off the gas, and let God take over, and us just kind of go on the ride with him, And so that was, I'm thankful. I wouldn't want anybody to go through something that we've gone through, but on the same vein, I'm thankful for what he's brought her through, what he's brought us through, and what he continues. I mean, the process is ongoing.
Makes me think of Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your understanding. And I think with our kids, do we trust them to God? Mm-hmm. And as a parent, like you said, oftentimes we want to fix, we want to be the one that kind of solves all the problems. And oftentimes in this life, we realize there's not a lot that we can control, but we do serve a God who can do anything he wants to do. And if we give our kids to them, we can see him do a work in them, usually a lot better and a lot more effective and a lot better results than when we try to control it. But there's just that tendency as a parent sometimes to jump in the control side of, I need to do this versus giving it to God. But it sounds like you guys really learned through that season to release her and believe that his plans for her were better than you could ever have for her, and that he was going to take care of his daughter. And that is something all of us, I think, are working all of our life to implement and live out.
Yeah, and the rest, that's actually my favorite verse, Proverbs 3:5-6, which ends with, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make your paths straight. And so that's I mean, we all want the path to be straight, right? We all, I mean, but it's kind of all over the place. And it's funny, you were talking about how letting go and God having a better plan, just something kind of not as serious or as traumatic as what we went through with our daughter. With our son, when he was in middle school, he started running. I was a new runner at that point a decade ago, and I was trying to get my kids interested in it. I was like, oh, well, let's get them running, doing a 5K or running for school. And he ran for his middle school. And then a 13, 14-year-old version of him sat me down and had a serious conversation with me saying, Dad, this is your dream. This is not mine. I don't want to run. And my wife and I said, okay, listen, you don't have to. I mean, she's not your job. So, but what we require is for you to pick an extracurricular activity, not just computers and church. We want you to. So he chose tennis. He played tennis for a little bit, enjoyed it, was okay with it, but then he fell back in love with running because of his friends. He discovered it on his own. So I learned again to not be coach, take my foot off the gas, which is our instinct is to gas it as mom and dad, but to take the foot off the gas, let him discover it for himself, him to kind of learn, the ups and downs of running or anything else. And because he's more self-driven. And so that was another lesson. I mean, I think he just keeps hitting me over the head with this let go and let God, Well,
that's some reminder out there for some guy that's listening with their child is, if you had a conversation with them and asked them what their dreams, what their desires are, and help guide them. But again, as they get older, we become more of a guide and less of just telling them exactly what to do. We coach them through it. And it sounds like you've just done a phenomenal job with your kids. I know you're super proud of them, and also very thankful for a wife who can keep you in line when you get out.
very, very much so. Very much so. I'm very thankful. I mean, with my family, I mean, God has probably given me more than I deserve. And so I'm going to keep giving back to him. I feel like I owe a lot to him for what he's given me,
I understand that. Jason, thank you for sharing about your kids. You mentioned making sure that marriage is first. What are some of the things that you've learned, or maybe even you've implemented recently in your marriage that's like we do these things because it makes us a stronger team?
Having a date. I mean, whether you do it every week, every month, but having a date set, whether you want to add it to your calendar or whatever else. And it's interesting how with the journey with our daughter, she has her driver's license, but she doesn't drive because some of the chronic illnesses she deals with. But my wife had been, for like the last year or two, dropping her off downtown at a ministry there on Wednesday nights. And so we live in Midland. This is like 20, 30-minute drive downtown. So she's not going to go back. So we would pretty much every Wednesday when my daughter's at this ministry, we have this date downtown. And we probably went to like a dozen different restaurants, 20 different restaurants. So that was like God providing that opportunity. Okay, we're going to have a date every Wednesday night on my dinner break. I work a night shift at work, so I can just come right from work and do that. But having a date, and also, I guess we can talk about this, as we talk about church, but having kind of some prescribed times for sex as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like, not that you need to put it on the calendar with a bit like an S, a secret S on the calendar, but I think that, to be able to make sure that intimacy is a part of your marriage. Whether you've been married for 2 years, a little easier maybe in that way, or 25 or 40 years. I mean, having intimacy a part of that marriage, and not just having sex, but kind of wooing your wife and dating her, and like you did before you were married, and showing her how important she is. I think is such a key thing. Not that I do very well at it. But we were just talking the other day about Valentine's Day, which was, about, a few weeks ago as we record this. But, we celebrate Valentine's Day, but it's not a big deal because I think we give flowers and kind of, show love to each other throughout the year. It's not just a one day thing. And we also say, I love you a lot. We just mentioned that and it's not just a passing thing. It's like we say it in person to each other, we say it on the phone, we say it in text, and we mean it. It's not just a throwaway line. And so I think, those words have power. And so I think, making sure that your spouse, your kids, like know that you love them, and then putting that into action. It's not just words. You can say it, but show it to me, and so, and I think the biggest part of showing love to your wife or whoever else is spending time with them. And so I do a lot of running. I go out of the states to run these marathons. Sometimes my family will go with me. Sometimes it'll be a solo trip. But because I'm doing all this running, I try to strategically do it when like my wife's asleep, or if I'm gone. Okay, I'm going to pay her back by doing a lot of chores, something like that.
So much wisdom. You shared so much there that we could unpackage. I think the intimacy part is huge, of just making sure that that's a priority, and realizing that physical intimacy is often the overflow of deep emotional connection and spending time talking. But we have to make sure that we're cultivating that. Like, it really is something at every season of our life to work at, to grow at, to develop. I've always thought that we probably should be the greatest student of our spouse. Like, if there's anything that we're studying, it would be that we're studying our spouse, to know them, to learn them. Because no matter how many conversations you have, no matter how much time you spend together, you're learning something new. They're growing, you're changing. Your kids are a different season. There's new things your wife enjoys. There's new things you enjoy, and working on that relationship to make it stronger all the time. So thank you for speaking so much wisdom into the conversation with how to really cultivate your marriage. When I think about what you just shared, when you think about your wife, what is it that, if you could describe your wife to somebody that's never met her, and the things that you love the most, what would you say?
She's beautiful. She's kind. She's funny. She loves people hard. She is a home health physical therapist That's her job. It has been for a couple of decades now. And so if that tells you anything about her, she has a servant's heart. She loves, helping people out. She has this, this personality where there's for many, many years, people love her laugh. They hear her laugh and you can hear it like down the hallway. Like if she laughed, like in this building, you would hear her. And so, I think it's just, it's amazing. And she puts up with me. And so I think not that she tolerates or was somebody that's permissive, but I think she's somebody who can handle a lot. She's the fifth child of five. So she's staunchly independent because of that. And being a preacher's kid as well, people sometimes don't know this, but pastors' families go through a lot behind the scenes that you don't see at all, because there's always some drama or some work to be done, and the family's always there. And so I think she went through that, and that made her a strong person. And I love that about her. We talked earlier about being checks and balances. That's what one of the things I love most about her. She is a strong woman and a strong woman of God. And we talked about what we went through with our daughter and us going to counseling. And we talked, her and I, about how, if we didn't have God a part of our personal lives, if we didn't have God part of our marriage, how in the world do we get through this? I mean, and so she, brings me back, gives me that perspective as well. And so, I'm just very thankful, and hopefully she'll stay with me another 25 years. So.
Flipping the script a little bit to your faith, we often ask our guests, what does redemption mean to you? But let's say I'm a young guy sitting across from you, and I just want to hear from the personal side, like what for you does redemption mean? Can you unpackage that for me?
It's almost like I can give you an image. I think about breaking off chains, because, whether you're a 15-year-old or a 55-year-old, we all wear stuff on us. And it's the unseen. Like my daughter talks about, she has unseen illnesses, things you can't see, and you don't ever know what somebody else is going through. So I would tell somebody across the table, I said, we all have these chains on us. It's a matter of, okay, how do you handle that? Do you just walk around and just let them hang? Or do you, ask God to just take them? Because, he hung on the cross.
Yes.
He can take a lot of stuff. He can take it all, but he's just waiting. He's not just going to do it. You have to ask him. And so I think that, realizing that it's not about us, realizing that, that we are not enough. And so, I think that in this world that I'm in TV news, there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of and then I think you have to have somewhat of an ego to be confident to do our job, just like you have to be confident to be a surgeon or to be a podcast host or whatever. But I think confidence can come, but I think that you have to realize that, like, it's God that's given you these gifts and these talents, and it's God that can release the tension and take the things off of you. And so for me, that's redemption, is that God can take the heavy load, the yoke, I guess, as it says in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it is for me. And I'm just, I just don't know how people do it. Because on your own, you can get away with a little bit. You can get by, but then it catches up with you for sure.
Yeah, I'm preparing right now for one of our new small groups. We're walking through the book, Gentle and Lowly, and from that passage of, talking about the yoke of Christ. And he says that I am gentle and lowly of heart. And that this idea that God comes to us in the lowest places. He's not turned off by that. He meets us there in the messy and the broken. And really, that's who he is. It's not part, that's fully God. And so I think when we understand that, it changes our perspective of what it looks like to have a relationship with him. Because oftentimes I think, at least early on in our journey, we can think of God as distant or in a massive throne and ready to strike us. And yet there's this image in Jesus of this gentle shepherd, who is there meeting us in our weakest, lowest place, and he loves to meet us there. And that is just such a beautiful picture of those chains coming off and him removing those one by one from our life. And it is a journey.
Yeah.
It's a process. We aren't perfected in a moment. He's done the work in a moment.
Sure.
But the process is throughout our life of changing and transforming us. As you've grown in your faith, what are some of those key disciplines that you developed to grow closer, to learn more about who he is, to stay involved in the community of faith?
I think a big part, one of the big ones for me is forgiveness. And because, I mean, our flesh, we want, I don't know if the word is revenge, but we want somebody to kind of get what's coming to them, right? And so
Well, we would say we want it to be fair.
Yeah.
And oftentimes our fair is from our point of view,
That's
right?
It's fair. Yes. Yeah. They deserved it because they did this
Yes.
and they said this, So, but I think that just saying, kind of giving that to God too, is sometimes
good.
like, and sometimes like I say, well, I do all this stuff and I've taken on all this load and this person doesn't do as much and God catches me and says, listen, whoa, son, listen, just work hard, and love others and don't worry about everybody else. And that's a hard lesson to learn as a man who, and fairness is an important thing, and respect is an important thing. Sometimes people aren't going to give you respect,
No.
and it's okay because they are human just like you and I are. And so forgiveness and humility is some big ones that I've learned along the way. Discipline, and I think that I'm not always as disciplined as I want to be in terms of reading the Bible. Running has helped me learn discipline about, okay, if you're disciplined and do something every day, it becomes a habit, and also you get better at it. And it's maybe hard at first, but then it gets easier, and then it gets harder, and then it gets easier. It's kind of this back and forth thing. And the Bible is a heavy thing. I mean, especially if you're reading stuff in the Old Testament or and it sometimes can be confusing, or it's like, wow, that's a lot. I need to kind of step back and kind of, what does this really mean? And so, but I think God's, discipline, forgiveness, those are probably some of the main ones.
You mentioned, and really, I think we all, from just hearing you talk about it, can clearly see that your wife is your best friend. But what have you learned about really being vulnerable and honest about whether it's your child and what they're going through, or a struggle to discipline yourself in something of letting other men into that space? Has that been something that you have grown in over the years? Has there been seasons that's been easier than others?
Well, I think that, what I've learned is to be, as our marriage goes on, to be super honest and to be upfront and to not sometimes we try to like shield our wives from stuff that we go through or stuff that we hear or stuff that, that we're feeling, our emotions. But your wife wants to hear your emotions. And wants you to kind of, sometimes, what are you angry about? What are you upset about? What are you really thrilled about? And so not just sharing the bad stuff, but sharing the really good stuff as well. And like I kind of learned through this whole journey with our kids is that I've learned to like tell my wife, what it maybe is a trigger for me. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm, and I don't bring my work home. I mean, a lot of people, maybe they have a very stressful job, and my job can be stressful. It's what we do, and we have deadlines, and we talk about some really tough stuff on TV. But I've God has really helped me to not bring that home. I kind of leave it at the TV altar or whatever. I leave it there. But what I sometimes certain things, like if she is going through some for her, maybe she's fighting with Olivia during that time or whatever else, our daughter. And I told her, I said, I don't need the play-by-play, but you can tell me, but sometimes that might make me really upset. So just being blatantly honest with your wife. And so sometimes you feel like, okay, well, I can't say that because it's going to come off the wrong way. But it's okay. We're all learning each other. And I think that, you have to, and sometimes you just have to pray about it, and by yourself and with your spouse as well. And I think that, we've practiced that and tried to pray more together. And you talked about intimacy. That's a very intimate
Yes.
thing,
Yes.
and to go to church together and to be a part of worship together and to pray in your home on your couch together. I mean, those are intimate
And
things.
everything in the world will try to keep you from that.
Oh, everything. Yeah, exactly. Don't stand up. Don't raise your hands. People are gonna look at you or something like that, or don't go down front, because that's certainly gonna cause people to whisper and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, let's shift that same thing that you've learned with your wife. How do you cultivate that with fellow brothers in the journey? Because I do think us as men need those relationships around us that can understand in a different way, because it's important that our spouse is first and foremost, but we need some guys that we can pull off the mask and be honest with. How have you developed those relationships over the years?
Just sitting down over food and sharing and asking how you're doing, and I think that the other person, and you as well, but the other person, your friends, the guys that from golf or running or from work or from church, them knowing that you're there.
Yeah.
That you are around, and you're available to talk, text, let's meet, and making sure they know that that you're available, and having not necessarily. I mean, it can be a mentorship, but it can also be just like, listen, it's a judgment-free zone, and I want you to feel comfortable sharing stuff with me, and it's just between you and I, and I've learned a lot about how I'm not there to be a friend's counselor. I'm not there to be their family member, but I'm there to be their friend, to be somebody that can maybe give some hopefully godly wisdom. But mostly, I think my dad used to say, "I have one mouth and two ears for a reason."
Yes.
He said that to me a lot. Maybe I talk too much. I don't know. And now I talk for a living, right? How about that? So, I mean, it's true though. I mean, like whatever, I don't think that was any accident, right? So, listening. And so I've learned, I used to be very extroverted, and I still am in some ways, but I have learned over the course of the last 20 years to take a step back, at least on my relationship side of things, friends, and just listen, and not like try to take over the conversation, but just let them talk and let them know that I'm listening, that I understand them, because I think we all just want to be seen.
Yes.
We all want to be like, okay, I get it. I maybe can empathize. I maybe have not gone through exactly what you've gone through, but I hear you, and I love you, and I'm here for you. And so I think, those seem like simple things, but it can be a revolution.
Yeah, well, you said two key things in my opinion, and that was ask and listen. Mm-hmm. And what we often do is ask but don't listen.
That's right.
Or we don't take the time to ask the question in the first place.
Yeah.
And if we really ask somebody how they're doing, and we take time to listen to what they share, it goes a long way. Because like you said, we all want to be heard. We want people to know about what we're walking through. And sometimes it's literally just the fact that they took the time to listen to you.
Yeah.
In a world full of a lot of chatter and a lot of things going on, and we can occupy our time with so many different things, that you would take the time to sit and listen to what I had to say.
Yeah.
It means the world to so many people. And I think that's just two key points: ask and listen. Well, Jason, this has been an honor to have you on the show. I'm excited to see you on the news here. It's fun, for us as a family. When the kids are around, I'm like, well, I know Jason. I know,
You're like, no.
what kind of life he lives. And I'm just thankful that we live in a community like that. And I'm thankful for the city of Columbus, but then just what God is doing around the world among believers. One of the things that we need more than ever is believers in the marketplace, wherever they are, being a light, like a city on a hill, shining and living out what they say they believe. It makes a huge difference, and I've seen it here in our community with how you live your life, the faith that you exhibit, the podcast that you talk about. I mean, not often. You may not say Jesus is Lord on the news, but you get to talk about the podcast.
Yeah,
I know on the podcast,
every episode,
you share so many stories about faith and people's relationship with the Lord. So thank you for what you do. Honored to have you on the show. God bless, man.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nate. Appreciate it.